This next segment was a piece I produced as a setup for a radio call-in show regarding the single girl. I found using a few minutes at the beginning of the show to graphically set the scene usually worked best. So from 1973, here is the single girl and her thoughts on herself, men, sex, other girls, and women's lib.
It's really getting sort of difficult today for females, well, I should say for me, I can only speak for myself, that you really can't find any loyal males to date. Now, I'm not saying that I am looking for marriage, and that's the only thought on my mind. They don't feel things deeply like maybe they used to. Now, I don't know. Maybe perhaps it was just society and mores, and you just didn't talk about things like that. And if you did anything on the sly, it was on the sly. And okay, so today it's very much out in the open, and it seems like people really don't seem to care, and it's really nothing for a male or a female to go out and just indiscriminately mess around, intimately speaking. And yet I wonder how intimate it really is, because there are so many of my friends, male and female again, who jump from one bed to the next from night to night. And yet they all seem to be, you know, good friends with all of these friends. But it really is beginning to bother me, because I seem to be sort of a fluke in that I don't want to go from bed to bed each night. And it's rather difficult to find men to date nowadays for any length of time without them pushing the subject of, if you don't have an affair with me, then see you around, because that's what I'm here for, and that's what you're here for.
Loving you hurts so good, sweet darling.
Well, I have men come to me and say, it is just so easy. I mean, females are just throwing themselves at me. And nowadays, the man does not walk up to the female and say something like, hey. Men tell me now that females let them know when they want to have some extracurricular activity. I think females today, with their women's liberation, are doing themselves a large injustice, because, okay, from the men's standpoint, they are now saying, this women's lib is really great. They're coming up with such quotes as, I never met a woman I couldn't. Okay, now on the other hand, females are saying, well, we are liberated women now. And I don't know, maybe this is sort of a defensive reaction. In the past, before, females have been sort of used by men. Now they want to use men themselves. I don't think it's revenge. I think they've just found that sex can be fun as well as the fact that men have found that in the past. But we're leaving out the very important factor that I really don't think human beings are made to hop from bed to bed, emotionally speaking. I think they can become very hard, unfeeling, and I think this can affect their motivations and their life in other aspects.
Let me take you into a world of fantasy, a world of love, a world of space. Just relax.
I often ask myself, how do you get someone to trust you? I know trust is something that isn't automatic. It has to be earned. And I really am not sure how to do that, except to, again,
just fine.
The key word is
so fine.
show loyalty yourself.
Come with me, baby.
Except this is such a paradox, because if you do show loyalty and trust for another person, and maybe they are so messed up because of previous experiences, they're still too afraid to accept this as the truth. And sometimes you can end up getting hurt yourself. And it's becoming a vicious circle. It's very difficult today now to lay your feelings on the table and say, this is really how I feel, because there is a very large chance that you're going to get rejected. So to avoid becoming rejected by another person, maybe you don't take things as serious as you want to. The sexual act itself, idealistically speaking, is to be caring about someone emotionally as well as physically, and wanting to please the other person emotionally as well as physically. But I think now today it is done just trying to please yourself as well as the other person physically. There is no meaning, deep meaning, and therefore when there isn't any meaning, each time you do it, it means less and less. And it becomes easier to begin having this intimate relationship with many varieties of people under many varieties of circumstances. And I think you really miss out on so much if you could be with just one person and learn to love that person and have a very intimate relationship.
I can open my eyes in the morning now and see my whole life lying right here by my side.
But I think the key word here is loyalty. And loyalty today seems to be passé, not only in sexual relationships, but in many other aspects of life. As we're seeing, nobody trusts nobody no more.
I touch your face with my fingers.
Oh, I think the attitude of young people today towards marriage, as far as something to stay away from, yes, they are feeling this way, but I think it's an attitude that has been developed because, well, there is so much divorce, and because of a signed piece of paper, you start taking the other person for granted, which I think is a very asinine attitude to take, because you either love someone or you don't, with or without that legal piece of paper. And obviously, if someone feels that they cannot enter into marriage because they'll start taking that other person for granted or nothing, I've heard some quotes sort of like, nothing is ever permanent, there are no guarantees. I mean, this is a really very sad attitude in life to take. Okay, so if someone says, I don't want to get married because of these aforementioned things, I don't think they should. I think they're very immature. I think the act of marriage is taken too lightly by some people. People today are too afraid to let their real emotions show. This could be one of the reasons why either people don't want to get married or they really cannot communicate in or out of marriage with a person of the opposite sex. I think people do fear being hurt more so today, and this comes from a lack of trust of the other person.